Lesson 7-8 has two different parts for homework. The first part is just renaming a fraction. I don't actually have the book in front of me, so I'm just going to choose a fraction. Let's say it's 3 5/8. So we want to rename this. So what's going to happen is this 3 is going to break up into 2 plus 1 plus 5/8. All we did was separate this 3 into something plus 1. Now what we can do is take this 2 down, and we can rename and regroup this 1 into the number of fraction pieces. So we're working with eighths, so we're going to make this 8/8 plus 5/8. Now we can combine everything together. We can group these together instead using the associative property. So that would be 2 plus 8/8 plus 5/8. And that would be 2 and 8 plus 5 is 13. 2 and 13/8 would be the answer for this. That would be this 3 and 5/8 regrouped as 2 and 13/8. Now, the book says to use this method for subtracting, but I have found that people struggle with it and it's really difficult to remember. And I was teaching it this year and it clicked to keep it very similar to borrowing and regrouping. So let's just look at regular borrowing and regrouping first. So if we have 72 minus 35, you can't do 2 minus 5, so you have to borrow 1 from the 7, and you're left with 6, and you regroup, and this becomes 12. But why does this become 12? Because actually, the 1 you're bringing over from the 6, that's actually 110, which equals 10 ones, and you're including that with the 2 ones you already have. So that's why this here becomes 12. And then you can do 12 minus 5 is 7, and 6 minus 3 is 3, and get 37. So we're going to use the same concept of borrowing and regrouping to work with fractions. So for some of the examples, you do need to find the LCD and rewrite the equivalent fractions. You need to do that first before you even decide to borrow and regroup, because sometimes you might not need to borrow and regroup. In this lesson, you do, that's what the lesson is about. But in the lesson from yesterday, you had to rename fractions, but did not have to borrow and regroup there. So first, let's look at a whole number. If we have 5 minus 1 and 3/4, let's write this vertically and let's line up our places. 5 minus 1 and 3/4. So just like we line up our 10s and 1s, we're going to line up our whole numbers and our fraction parts. I had demonstrated this with a chart, but I don't think we need it. I think as long as everyone understands we have to line it up just like we would any other numbers, this will be fine. So we have nothing here to subtract the 3/4 from. So we need to borrow from the 5. We borrow 1 from the 5. That leaves us with 4 ones. Now that extra 1 is being put into this place. So that 1 is being moved over. Now we're working with fourths, so I would want to regroup this 1 into fourths. If I regroup it into something like 6/6, is that true? Yes, but that's not helpful for us to then subtract the fourths. So I can say 1 equals 4/4. So now I have 4/4 here in this spot. So now this is 4 and 4/4 minus 1 and 3/4. Now I can do 4/4 minus 3/4 and get 1/4. And I can do 4 minus 1 and get 3. And 3 and 1/4 is my answer. Now let's say it's a fraction. Now you have both mixed numbers. Let's do 7 and 1/8 minus, let's do 6 and 5/8. I'm just making up these numbers. So first we ask ourselves, can we do the fraction minus the other fraction? I can't do 1 minus 5, so I'm going to need to borrow. I borrow from the 7, and I'm left with 6 ones. Now that 1 that's being moved over, 1 is equal to, well, we're working with eighths here, so 1 is equal to 8/8. But we already have 1/8 here, so I need to combine this, the 8/8 from the 1, with the 1 that I already have there. So now the 8/8 plus the 1/8, we're going to have 9/8 in this section, in our fraction column. If I want to rewrite it, I can rewrite it as 6 and 9/8 minus 6 and 5/8. If I want to. If I don't, if I can just see, just like when normal subtracting, if I want to do 9/8 minus 5/8 here, that's fine as well. So 9/8 minus 5/8 is 4/8. 6 minus 6 is 0. Then I am going to simplify by dividing top and bottom by 4, and I get 1/2 as my answer. Now, if we were doing something like 8 and 2/3 minus 3 and 5/6, then first what I need to do is I need to rewrite these fractions to be to have the same denominator. So my LCD here is 6. So I don't need to rewrite 5/6, but I take 2/3, I multiply by something over something to get something over 6. I know that 3 times 2 is 6, so if I put a 2 in the denominator, I need a 2 in the numerator. So 2 times 2 is 4. Now I rewrite my problem. 8 and 4/6 minus 3 and 5/6. So, oops, this was not on frame. So it's 2 over 3 times something over something to get me 4 times, so let me repeat that. It was 2/3 times, I did a blank fraction bar, equals something over my new denominator as my LCD. Then I said 3 times what gets me 6, that's a 2. If I put the 2 in the denominator, I put the 2 in the numerator, and I get 4/6. So here, I can't do 4 minus 5. So I borrow 1 from the 8, get 7. I regroup. That 7, that 1 moves over. I have sixths. Oops, I have sixths. So that becomes 6/6. But I regroup it with what I already have, and 6/6 plus 4/6 is 10/6. Now I can do 10/6 minus 5/6 and get 5/6. That was not perfectly lined up. And 7 minus 3 and get 4. So I get 4 and 5/6. So that's how to solve these problems for homework.